that's really one of my key messages is I think there's a lot in there on skills, the mental strength needed for success, and then finally the faith as well. And I think when you get the skills, the mentality, and faith, you can do whatever you want in this world.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Regardless of your calling in life, there are probably a number of skills associated with your field. Now, life is very much the same way. As parents, as husbands, there are a number of skills that you can develop to help ensure that you have a better and stronger relationships in your life, not the least of which, of course, is keeping God at the center of everything. So today's guest is adept at sales and building sales teams, but his faith is what has propelled him to the top of his game. So let's hear more about that today. Welcome to the podcast, Jon Alwinson. Now, Jon lives in Atlanta like myself, and with his sales experience, he's achieved individual accolades, and he's been a sales contributor and won accolades for his regional management positions. And he's taken his knowledge, skills, and abilities and poured them into a book called The Skills, Mentality, and Faith Needed to Be Great in Sales, Relentless Sales. So, Jon, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Mike, it's so good to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Jon. You know, I am so glad that you took the time to reach out to me. When we first talked, we had this conversation around the importance of faith in the marketplace. And it's really what caught my attention about your book. I mean, it's easy to go, well, this is a book about sales. That would be true. But it's about the faith needed in sales. And really, let's face it, the faith needed in everything to survive in the world. So talk about that and how you came up with this concept, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started on this project.
Yeah, Mike, thank you. I think when I was writing the book, I'm originally from Orlando, Florida. So I'm a Florida boy. I've been in Atlanta for the last 12 years. My wife, Sandra, we have 2 kids, and actually one on the way as well. So
wow. Congrats.
Thank you. We're in this fun stage with young kids right now. And, I feel very fortunate to, like you said, have achieved some great things at a sales individual contributor level, and for the last 8 years as a manager. And just really felt a call in my life. I felt like God was asking me to make a little bit more of an impact beyond just myself. And this book is a playbook for the last 15 years of sales that I've been in that I really just want to share with the world, and faith being the core component. I think a huge competitive advantage to sales.
Talk more about that. How do you use your faith? Because let's face it, as you know, corporate America is not always welcoming to faith conversations in the world. Let's generalize it that way.
Yes.
How do you use faith to in your business on a daily basis?
Well, I think first it's kind of that morning routine that I talk about in the book. We call it our daily appointment with God, or the dog in the morning, and just having a good time with God and starting our day that way. I think when you fuel up with the creator of the universe and someone who knows us very, very well, it gives us huge power. It gives us warmth. It gives us genuineness that our customers feel and they sense. And then when we ask God to live through us during our day, that really impacts everything we come across. So I think really the morning's the start. And then I think, not being afraid to speak about our faith. We talk about everything in corporate America, and they should have openness to everything, including faith. And they need to have openness about all things, right? And so faith is something that we don't have to jam down people's throats or be annoying with, but it's something that we can just let flow from us.
I like to think that I wear it on my sleeve. They see it in me by the way I act and talk. And so they just see that light. Does that hold true to you, for you as well?
They do, Mike. It is obvious, right? There's something different about you. We hear Christians say that a lot. There's always something different about you, but I do feel like
we don't need to run around screaming Bible scripture for somebody to go, oh, this guy, at least I don't think.
Right. And also, in addition to how we live, our performance, like how we live, being excellent in our work is another way of showing our faith.
I want to go back to something real quick because sometimes I hear guys, and I'm just going to call it like I see it. Straight talk here, man.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of excuses. Hell, I got to get to work in the morning. I don't have time to stop. Da 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 da. And I agree with you. I'm a big morning routine proponent. If you get your day off too, and for me, it's some kind of combination, right? I'm working out in the morning and I'm doing prayer and meditation. Whether one becomes before the other really is dictated by my overall schedule for the day. But those two things, or one of those two things, is happening in the morning to get my day off to a quick and good start. How can men, if they're like going, okay, I got to hop in the car, I got an hour commute, how can they create that morning routine to get right before they go out into the world? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And I think it doesn't matter the combination. I do think a little bit of exercise. I do a little bit of reading, meditation, prayer. What I do is I kind of have a script for my morning. I have some scripture that I read through before, kind of warm me up into prayer time in the morning, but a script that I follow and a routine that I follow. And James Clear in Atomic Habits talks about just one small, simple adjustment to our system that we have created. And I would just encourage people to try waking up a half an hour earlier. Just don't,
I've tried that.
It's tough. It's tough, but with the right kind of discipline and motivation, you can get there.
I agree. Keyword being discipline, right?
Yeah.
So guys have their morning routine. All right. We got that one. Check. They get to the office and things go sideways in a hurry.
Yeah.
Now what do they do?
So we talk about this in chapter 2, right? So chapter 2 is identity. When we know who we are, it allows us to breathe a little bit, to gather all the facts, to not jump to conclusions, and to remember whose we are, right? So the morning routine is the beginning of reminding us our identity. When stuff hits the fan and the wall, right, we can slow down and breathe and remember that our identity is not 100% in our work and that it's going to be okay. And what I've learned over the last few years, and kudos to my manager, is to just get all the facts first. Breathe, get all the facts, don't freak out. And I think, just to be calm, cool, collected, and there's always a solution to these problems that come our way. But the key is when our identity is rock solid, we don't waver, we don't worry, we don't break when problems hit.
Yeah, it's a good point. Identity is something that I talk about in my book quite a bit because I'm a firm believer. And of course, like a lot of people had to learn this the hard way, that once your identity is tied to Christ, you don't necessarily have to worry about what people think about you or who you are. I could be a garbage truck driver as much as I could be, not that there's anything wrong with that, as much as I could be an attorney or a doctor or whatever. I guess the point to that is people hear who you are or what you do, what your calling is in life, and they make assumptions. And, most of the time those assumptions are incorrect, but it's that identity that's just so critically important, I think.
It is. And having a good group around you, a good core group of people, yeah. I call it the board of directors of your life in chapter 1, but creating your board of directors, right? When you have people in your corner, when you have good core folks around you, man, it allows you to not break to these pressures and worries of the world, and to go to people that you trust that'll give you good feedback.
Now, how do you encourage people to do that?
For me, it's been church. And so church, there are so many successful people in church. There are so many good people in church. I mean, you want to, I was talking to a young man the other day and he said, where do I even start? And dude, go to church, right? And church is a great place to start because people want to help younger folks. They want to help people of all ages, but that's where you can find these folks that have been successful in business, in life, and people that can really be part of your board of directors.
Cal, let's have some fun here. Speaking of church, speaking of church. Now, John goes to a church called Passion City, and I don't know, it's probably the biggest church I've ever been in. Now, it was probably about a year ago. I went there. They have this big men's thing. I think it's once a quarter. Fight night?
Fight night, yes,
Fight
sir.
night. It's once a quarter, right?
Yep.
Is that what? So last year they had Willie Robertson come in, and I was really actually upset. I've seen Willie speak before, but he was speaking about being a Jesus guy, and I thought, doggone it, he stole all my lines. Now how am I ever going to put this in my book? But I went there for fight night, and I gotta say, I don't know how many guys were there. What does that fit? A couple thousand people?
It does.
Know?
Yeah, several thousand, I think. And by the way, I was there as well that night. So,
I mean, it was insane, right? The guy shouting Jesus guy. That was so awesome.
Yes.
But that's the first time I'd ever been there. And so if I guess this is a shout out to Passion City. And if you're ever in Atlanta, you just got to go check this place out because it's insane. But the beauty is, and I can imagine there's a tremendous network of men that are there. It has to be, because when I was looking around the room, I was like, wow, there's a lot of passionate guys here.
Yes, you'd be surprised how many successful business people are in this church. And that's not why you go to church, obviously, but that's a great byproduct of being in church and around other believers. You find people that in every aspect, I mean, there's major business owners in the Atlanta metropolitan area that are at the church I go to, and it's great. Sometimes I shake their hand and I have friends text me like, do you even realize who you just shook? And I said, I have no idea who it was. And they said, that was the CEO of this corporation or that corporation. And it's just cool to be part of a church like you talked about that is Jesus focused.
Well, come on, John, you're a big wig. You got a book out. I mean, that counts for something, man.
It's one day, yeah, but got to start someplace, right?
So let's talk more about faith in the marketplace. Now, maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about your story and why, faith is importance to you. Where does that come from?
Yeah, well, it starts at an early age. So my dad was actually a Presbyterian minister in Orlando growing up. So the first 30 years of my life, he was a minister, and he's doing men's ministry now. He's doing some awesome stuff. But I grew up in an environment where Jesus was taught, but also my mom and dad had a good check and balance of not over pushing the Jesus stuff and letting me kind of find faith on my own. So there was a period of time where I just didn't want to go to youth group. I didn't want to go to church, and they kind of honored that period. Right. And it was a really cool environment growing up. But after high school and college, I started a footwear company with my older brother, and we were manufacturing shoes in China, selling throughout the US. And we had about a 5-6 year run where we were giving it our all, but ultimately the company failed. And it was that adversity, that being in the fire. Yeah. And then a couple of years as an associate in the medical device industry, called the first 7.5 years of adversity, to where when I finally had my chance to own a territory, to be a full line sales rep, I just went all out and accomplished some cool things. Rookie of the year, rep of the year, best 2 years in a row. And I say that because I think there's so many people that are going through adversity. And the first 8 years of my career, I was like, what am I doing? I'm not making any money. I'm getting, I'm just working 2 jobs and working jobs in the evening to make ends meet. And I want to encourage people. I want to give them the playbook that I created over the last 15 years to potentially help along the way with the hard times, with the good times, and then ultimately, as you and I have talked about, to push people to faith. Yeah.
And faith is really about one of the many things it's about is authenticity. So how can somebody, whether they're in the marketplace, I don't really differentiate. I mean, I talk about the marketplace and personal and professional life, but to me, I don't differentiate. I mean, I just show up either or. I am who I am.
Yeah.
But
love that.
How can somebody be more authentic? I mean, I'm a firm believer, by the way, John, and as I'm sure you are, that regardless of what your position is, it doesn't even matter if you just answer the phones and say hi for a living. You're in sales. I really do believe that we're all in sales to some degree or another. Mm-hmm. How can somebody show up more authentically in life?
This is back to kind of the Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I quote a little bit in the book. But, being genuinely interested in other people, whether you're an introvert, whether you're an extrovert, It's okay. Both are good. Both sides of that equation are both equally successful in sales. But I think the first piece is fueling up with God in the morning, which we've talked about. And then secondarily is being genuinely interested in others. And I have a chapter in the book that I talk about relationships over everything.
Yeah.
And when we jump into business, and even if it's a transactional space, we are shooting ourselves in the foot. We need to take that first few minutes, even if the customer wants to go straight to business, pull it back appropriately and be genuinely interested in them. Try to figure out what's important to them. See if because your solution, service, product may or may not be a good fit. So I do think for me, being a salesman and leading a sales team, it is about genuine interest in our customers and figuring out their problems.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It's all about relationships. And some people, and you talk about this in your book as well, some people, they're very transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for some people, it's that fear of building relationships that gets in the way. Now, I don't think you spell it out that way, but talk about how fear can get in the way of not just our relationships,
Mm-hmm.
but being successful in life.
Yeah, I think fear is such a big and big part of everyone's career, whether we admit it or not. I think we've all lived on both sides of that continuum where we're maybe overconfident or underconfident, but fear is an always present situation. And we talk about conquering fear in chapter 9 of my book. A lot of people have told me that's their favorite chapter. And I talk about the next play mentality. I talk about how faith is the only thing that overcome fear. And so some of the things that I talk about are that next play. And I grew up a sports guy. I know you're a sports guy, Mike.
Yeah.
Basketball was my sport. And there were days where you were off initially shooting the ball, maybe an air ball or a miss, and it could wreck you the rest of the game. And you need to quickly figure out next play, right? And so I would say that to myself, next play. Or I would envision like a clear white piece of paper and say clear. To just clear my thoughts for that game and not let it break me. Because if you start missing in a sport or you start making bad passes in football per se, that could ruin you the entire game. And you've got to find ways as business professionals and as people in general not to let fear cripple you. Not to let all those. You've got to find out what works for you. But I give some ideas in the book to try to help.
Maybe we can expand on that a little bit. And it doesn't matter necessarily. I don't think we just happen to be, because you're a sales professional, talking about sales a little bit, but I think this is really the carryover into professional life is same. How can, and maybe you can give a couple of tips or something. How can men in their job overcome some of their fear to help them get to the next level? I mean, the bottom line is, regardless of what somebody's doing, chances are really high.
Yes.
At least one of the things they want to achieve in their life is to make more money. Which is, right now in this kind of economy, you got to keep up with what's happening at the pump and the grocery store.
Right.
So most people want to make more money, but a lot of times it's about overcoming fear in order to get to the next level. So maybe you could help some guys out there if they're going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, the biggest thing in that's helped for me is memorizing scripture. And 2 Timothy 2:7, right? God's not giving us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and sound mind. Figuring out what works for you, but finding a couple really powerful scriptures to hang your hat on. I have like a little note card that I put in my front pocket. And when times are tough, I pull that out and I read that scripture, or I have it taped out in my gym outside this door, on the wall, on the refrigerator, everywhere you go. I'm trying to fuel my mind and 10x positive thoughts into my mind before I go out to the day. So when those tough times come, I'm rock solid and I'm remembering where my identity really is.
Well, there you go. Then that leads to, I think, creating good daily habits. So what can a guy do to create good daily habits for his life?
So again, I think everything starts in the morning. Like you talked about exercise. What I do is I have a little planner. It's a full focus planner that I use from Michael Hyatt. I do my top 3 goals the night before. And I even write down my agenda as well. And so when I write it down the night before, when I wake up in the morning, I can go on the offense rather than trying to figure out what am I doing next. It's there. I don't have to worry about my phone and social media and other things distracting me. I can stay 100% locked in and focused on what I need to do for work that day. So those are some of the things I do. I really try to have like a morning warm-up routine, kind of a shutdown routine at night, and just, it's tough. I'm not perfect with it, but I try to stay as consistent as I can with that.
In fact, now it's funny you said that. I got my Michael Hyatt planner. It sits on my desk all day long. And by the way, this is my second year in the 3-ring binder. I don't know if you went that route.
Nice.
I decided to go with the 3-ring binder because they would send you a full year of calendars out, which I kind of find handy because sometimes I want to get stuff down, more than 90 days out.
Yeah.
But yeah, planning your life as best you can, I think, is really important. Planning the day ahead. Otherwise, I found that we find ourselves living by the seat of our pants. And I've gone through this routine lately where it's all about, at the end of the day, as best I can, clearing my desk off so that when I walk in the next morning, I'm not feeling stress. Although if somebody were to see my desk right now, they would wonder what kind of truth is in that. A dirty little secret, Jon, I can't speak for you, but when you're writing a book, which is what I've been finishing up on, I have papers and stuff like all over the place.
Yes.
Just for research. But how can guys be better organized to create a better habit and better feelings in their life?
So, again, I try to have like a 1-page document, like my weekly attack list. And we talk about the attack list for in the book, and I have some free downloads on my website for the attack list. But I try to just compartmentalize, whether it's an individual I'm working with or a specific account, what those next steps are, and keep kind of a running update on a Word document. It's not rocket science. And so in addition to the planner that we talked about, in addition to kind of the morning routines, I have like an ongoing to-do list per se. I call it the attack list. And those are things that I just try to systematically work every single day. And then, like you talked about, at the end of the day, try to clear out, all right, what are the next steps? Do I need to jot down a to-do list for tomorrow or reprint that list? And throughout the day, I'm just chalking it up and writing notes on it.
Yeah. And full disclosure here, I'm not always very good at my end of the day wrap up. I'm not, but man, oh man, I think I do think it's a big deal to wrap up your end of the day. And this is what I've experienced. It really, you're glorifying God when you do that. And because it allows you to really take the time, and then you don't have to worry about it the next morning when you're hopping into your routine. Cause I don't know about anybody else. Maybe I'm crazy, but man, if I come into my office and my desk is a wreck, all of a sudden I start to get stressed out.
Yes. And as soon as I leave, so as soon as I either get home or as soon as I walk out my office door, I'm getting mugged by my 7-year-old and 5-year-old. And they literally want to wrestle every time I step out of my office. And so, like you said, kind of tightening up loose ends, saying a quick prayer, God, thanks for this day, commit it to you, and then kind of shifting from full on like work mode. For me, the hardest thing is shifting to family time because I am a workaholic, borderline workaholic, and I drive. It is very difficult, as much as I love my family, to slow down and try to shift gears. And so it usually takes
talk about that, Jon. Talk about that, because this is a huge challenge. They're really, again, haven't always been the best at this, but there has to be a shutdown time, right? Where you go, okay, work's done. I've got to spend time with my family. Because if you don't, you're just not going to build that relationship. Talk about that. You're a young father, so you're maybe you're still trying to figure this out. But talk about that a little bit.
There's a lot of guilt too. I mean, yesterday I was not good at this yesterday, right? My kids, they just wanted to play with me. They wanted to go outside, and I gave them maybe 15, 20 minutes of time. I had other things on my mind, other things I was trying to wrap up work-wise. and, it's obviously into quarter time and all that. And so it's, I felt guilty yesterday, big time, of not being able to give them the time they wanted. All they wanted was dad. And I think for the dads out there, the true men, don't miss that, no amount of work will ever make up for failure at home. Right. And so I think we've got to encourage each other, that iron sharpens iron aspect that you and I were talking about earlier of encourage each other to remember, put the first things first. And our families are way more important than anything, even though work is super important and super critical as well.
Well, it takes money to live, and it also takes money to build up God's kingdom. And they really do work hand in hand, I believe. I'm learning to believe that, right? I mean, money, money can corrupt your thinking. Now, as a leader of sales teams, how do you make that kind of connection between being a leader in a sales team to leading men outside your life and being that example of a good father and a good businessman?
Just trying to be genuine. Craig Rochelle always talks about people would rather follow leaders who are real than who are always right.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is just being genuine. I think your teams know what you're not good at before you even want to tell them what you're not good at. So just remember that, like, you're not hiding it from anybody. I tell my team what I'm terrible at. I tell them what I think I'm good at. And so I think being real is one. And then the openness of if you are a person of faith, I think we talk about everything in this world. We talk about accepting everything in this world. Talk about your faith, but do it in an appropriate way. But don't be afraid to talk about your faith. We had community group this week, and we were all talking about it. And I think one person asked me, well, how do you talk about your faith and work? Is just, hey, I was at church last week and this came up. And you don't have to be annoying with it, but be genuine on who you are. And I think people appreciate it, and they won't find it as a turnoff.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about another word that's in the title of your book, because I love this word in the title of your book, and it's a big, so it's got to mean something to you. So I got to ask, relentless sales. Talk about the word relentless. What does that mean to you?
So knowing my background, knowing that I failed a venture for 5 years, right? During that 5 years of giving everything, I was working 2 evening jobs, one in a restaurant, one at a gym, so I could work out every other night. And so for 5.5 years, the first 5.5 years of my career, I was investing everything back in the business, taking very little money from it, and working 2 evening jobs. And so giving everything I had for a vision that my brother and I thought we were going to be successful in. And so you take that, you max that with 2 more years of, working all day and then getting a call the evening as you're sitting down with your spouse and saying you have to fly to another state for a case in the morning. The first 7.5 years of my career were filled with adversity. And I think relentless means to me unyielding, determined, never giving up, trusting God along the way for our lives, and just not giving up. It's not to be annoying with customers, but it's more of an internal thing that our heart, knowing that we serve a big God, allows us and frees us up to be relentless.
Is that one of your big takeaways from starting a company? I mean, it has to be tough thinking, oh, we got to go up against, and maybe you didn't consider this your competition, but of course these big name brands come into my head like, oh man, this guy's out trying to fight against Nike and Adidas and New Balance. I mean, those are the 800-pound gorillas, are they not?
Correct. Yeah. And there are tons of mistakes made along the way. Some of our kind of proprietary stuff we showcased too early, and we didn't have the direct line with buyers like we should have. And so bigger companies copied, emulated our styles, and they quickly took the market share that we were trying to gain. And so, yes, you're exactly right.
You should have watched more Shark Tank.
That's right. Should have partnered with one of those guys.
Well, it's always an interesting program to watch. I learned a lot by watching it. I enjoy watching, as an entrepreneur myself, it's interesting what you can learn from other entrepreneurs. And I've learned to, as I'm sure you have over time, it's hard to look at things knowing what I know now and go, well, that was a failure. Well, maybe things didn't go the way I wish they would have gone. But now I look at things and go, wow, what an incredible, I learned so much from that. It kind of sucked to go through it. That whole military thing, embrace the suck, right? But
yes,
it wasn't fun to go through some things. And quite honestly, I still go through things on a daily basis. Even writing the book and going through the book process, I realized, oh, somebody thought it would be a great idea for me to write a book. And wait a second, I didn't ask enough questions on the front end. And now I got to do X, Y, and Z on the back end that I didn't even know I had to do.
Yeah.
And so, you're always learning. So is Relentless kind of part of that learning process that you've gone through, that you're maybe hopefully at a stage, you're still a young guy, where you've embraced the fact that I don't want to call it that we failed. I mean, essentially I've succeeded as a result of going through that.
Right. It's part of my DNA. It's who I am. I feel like it's who we are as God's kids and God's sons and daughters. Right. And you look at every kind of big character in the Bible throughout history. I think God gives us that relentless spirit, that never give up spirit, that I want to get out to the world and want to encourage people. I mean, so many people, and take it for sales, for example, so many people throw in the hat too early. I was talking to a friend whose daughter was in sales 1 year.
Yeah.
And he said, no, she can't do it. It's too much for her. I said, dude, that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to encourage people, to give them the playbook that I wrote over the last 15 years to help them not throw in the towel too early. And that's really one of my key messages. Is I think there's a lot in there on skills, the mental strength needed for success, and then finally the faith as well. And I think when you get the skills, the mentality, and faith, you can do whatever you want in this world.
Yeah, 100%. And this, we brought this up already. And I do feel it's important that you get around, especially if you're a younger person, get around to the right people. When I started my sales career way back when, and I don't think you could probably even do this now, the sales manager took me out to, I don't even remember how big a building it was, a 10-story building. And we started at the top, and he goes, here's how you cold call. And we got halfway through the building and he left. And, then it was up to me to figure it out from there. And to be quite frank, I failed miserably.
Yeah.
I failed miserably. Some of it was fear of, what's going on? Yeah. But I quit on myself. I really did quit on myself. And I never did really overcome that, even though I had years. So, but I didn't have the right people around me that were encouraging me. And, when you get involved in sales and those types of things, they're terribly difficult, because the reality is you're going to hear no. Way more than you're going to hear yes.
Yeah.
And, now I look back on it and I'm like, man, thank God that guy gave me a no today. Thank you, Jesus. Because now I'm not wasting any time. And I've really seriously gotten to that point. But I got to say, it was a journey to get there. And I mean, 20 some odd years to get there to overcome it. So, I just want to encourage people. I agree with you 100%. Get around people that are going to encourage you, because you can do it.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Exactly. And I call that the getting kicked in the teeth part of the early career, right?
Yeah, I have no teeth.
Yeah, I know. They're all fake. These are all fake.
These are fake.
It's the reality that first part of your career, whatever you're in, whether you're in sales, if you're an engineer, whatever, it's that first early part of your career where you are getting kicked in the teeth. You're learning the game, you're learning the business. And, like you said, when you have mentors, when you have your identity rock solid and faith, it's beyond just skills. Skills are important. They're really important, but it is the mental toughness, and it is the faith that really lead to success.
100%. Jon, before we pause today, I just want to make sure, because there's a lot in a lot of great stuff in this book. Is there anything else that you want to leave us with today before we wrap up?
I think we had a great conversation today. I think, continue to ask good questions, continue to look for the why, make life about the other person. And so whether you're in sales or you're not in sales, this book, I think could be great value to anybody. But I think more importantly, be curious, ask good questions, ask why, and then ask secondary questions to dig a little bit deeper so you can serve your customers well. And I think when we put them first, everything else falls into place.
100%. I agree with that. Jon, we'll put this stuff in the show notes too. How can people get a hold of you? How can they find the book?
Yeah, so it's just my name, Jon Alwinson, Jon, Alwinson.com. Amazon is where the book is held. And so we'd love to have you guys pick up a copy. If you do, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn or one of the social media platforms. We'd love to connect with you all and stay in touch and get your thoughts on the book.
There you go. Come on, guys. Everybody knows how to get to Amazon. Get on out there today and check out this book because it's a great book, not just on sales. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier, we're all in sales, so it doesn't matter. Get the book anyway. It's really about being on that faith journey. Jon, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate you sharing the book and sharing your story.
Mike, I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Take care.